Have you ever wanted a rat riding a motorcycle while holding a wrench to become your commander? Well, now's your time to shine, baby. Let's talk about that. Greasefang Okiba Boss. For 1 white and a black, we get a 4/3 rat pilot. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return target vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of your next end step. So let's talk about what kind of vehicles we have in this deck. For example, we have Putrid Suit. This is a vehicle that has Vigilance and Crew 1, which I'll only read Crew this one time, and whenever I mention Crew in the following vehicle card, I won't be reading out its description. So to Crew, we have to tap any number of creatures we control to the total power of 1 or more. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. So it's like we're powering up our vehicles by tapping a creature, but remember, these cards have summoning sickness, so it's important that we can be strategic with this kind of thing where we can end up casting the vehicle a turn before we start casting creatures that we can tap to crew this vehicle, because the creatures that we're casting to crew these vehicles, they can have summoning sickness because the word TAP. When it uses the word tap, it's different from the tap symbol with a colon. That means if they have summoning sickness, they can't use that ability, but the word tap allows us to tap them even if they have summoning sickness. So anyways, this is a 4/3 where we just are required to have 1 power crew this vehicle. Dragonfly Suit. It's a 3/2 with flying, and it requires crew 1. Raider's Card. Whenever this attacks, we'll look at the top card of our library. If it's a land card, we may put it on the battlefield tapped. It's a 4/4 and it requires crew 3. Errata Express. This is an 8/6 with menace and it only requires crew 4. This is awesome. It also costs 5 mana to cast, but what's great is that with our commander, we can end up doing some pretty sweet shenanigans where we can discard our vehicles into our graveyard or mill them in there even and bring these back during our combat for free. Let's talk about that when it comes to discarding our cards. We have Seasoned Hollowblade, where we can just discard a card, tap this, and it gains indestructible until end of turn. What matters is that we can just discard as many cards as we're wanting from our hand, so we're likely going to discard those vehicles, as well as Putrid Imp. We can discard a card from our hand, and this gains flying until end of turn. It also gets +1/+1 if we have 7 or more cards in our graveyard. But again, that doesn't really matter. What's important is that these two are very low CMC, so we can cast them early in the game, start putting vehicles in our graveyard, and getting them for free with our commander. Another way to put more vehicles in our graveyard is with Perpetual Timepiece. We can tap this and mill 2 cards. We can also pay 2, exile this, and shuffle any number of cards from our graveyard back into our library. There's also Teshar Ancestor's Apostle. Whenever you cast a historic spell, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard back to the battlefield. And luckily, historic spells are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas, and guess what all of our vehicles are? You would guess correct, they are artifacts. So going back to the vehicles, Oval Chase Dragster. So this is trample, haste, and it requires crew 1. What's important is that this is a 6/1 with only crew 1. It has trample, it has haste. I don't mind if I lose this card because our commander is going to get it back for us every single combat. I'll mention a few more vehicles and we can move on to the next category. There's Parhelion II. This is a vehicle with flying, first strike, vigilance, and whenever it attacks, we create 2 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance that are attacking. This also has crew 4 and it is a 5/5. This is a great card for the deck. And the last one I want to mention is not a Lloyd Ship. So this is a vehicle with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, we get to exile target player's graveyard. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may put a creature exiled with not a Lloyd Ship onto the battlefield under your control. It also has crew 3 and it's a 5/5. I personally love taking cards from other players, so this is a great one for the deck. Moving on to card draw, let's talk about Morbid Curiosity. As an additional cost to casting this spell, which is 1 black, we have to sacrifice a creature or an artifact. We can draw cards equal to the mana value of the sacrifice permanent. This is perfect for our deck. We can sacrifice our vehicles and we get them back with our commander anyways. Costly Plunder. We can sacrifice an artifact or a creature in addition to casting this spell, and we get to draw 2 cards. Key to the City. So whenever we tap this, we discard a card, and up to 1 target creature can't be blocked this turn. Well, good for us because discarding cards are actually great. We can discard those vehicles and our commander can later target them. Also, whenever this becomes untapped, we can pay 2 mana to draw a card. Village Rights. You probably see the theme here. We're sacrificing our creatures and we're drawing 2 cards because sacrifice is not a big deal to us. Dockside Chef. For 1 and a black, we can sacrifice an artifact or a creature and draw a card. Luckily, we can do this multiple times, and he only costs us 1 mana. Let's talk about Painseer. So whenever this becomes untapped, we're going to reveal the top card of our library and put that into our hand. We lose life equal to that card's mana value. Well, lucky for us, we have to tap creatures to start crewing our vehicles initially if we're not using our commander's ability. So whenever this becomes untapped, we get to start getting more cards to our hand. The Ram Senior Edificer. This is going to be an amazing card card draw engine for this deck. Whenever we cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, we draw a card. I love this one. Let's talk about Lashiel, Clockwork Scholar. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. Whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability only triggers once each turn. Well, that's alright with me. Drawing an extra card is always very important because it's better than just drawing one each turn. Let's make it 2. As for the removal of the deck, we have Return to Dust, Mortify, Despark, and Dispatch. These are going to help us mess with our opponents, and I'm always a sucker for Return to Dust. I know a lot of people don't like it because of the mana cost, but for 4 mana, we're able to exile up to 2 things if it's during our main phase, which I love. Mortify, we get to destroy a creature or enchantment at instant speed. Despark, for 2 mana, we get to exile a permanent with mana value 4 or greater, which yes, it has the condition of whatever the permanent is, mana value 4 or greater. This can deal with any Eldrazi. This can deal with any huge threat, only for 2 mana at instant speed. And Dispatch, this is the budget version of Swords to Plowshares, especially for artifact decks. So for 1 white mana, at instant speed we can tap target creature, but if we control 3 or more artifacts, we instead get to exile that creature. Some of the ramp in the deck, we have Goldmere and Leadenmere. These are creatures we could tap for mana, or we can have them crew some of our vehicles. There's also Sol Ring and Arcane Sigma, which Arcane Sigma is at a great price right now. I'm seeing 69 cents at this recording, which is insane, because this used to be a $15 or $10 card around there, and Sol Ring is around $1.37. We also have Scare Tiller, so whenever this becomes tapped, we get to choose one. We can put a land card from our hand onto the battlefield tapped, or we can return a land card from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Love this one, and it's great for decks that can take advantage of our creatures becoming tapped and untapped. Thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like to purchase this deck, there'll be a link in the description down below. If you like this video, you're going to love this one right here, and thank you to the patrons who help support this show. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.